And we're live. Hello, everybody. I am at a park connected to some Xfinity hotspot somewhere around here. I don't know where, but yeah, I'm joined by Pedro, who is on the Remix team and has been working on the dev server. Actually, I guess you can introduce yourself.
No, that was great. Yeah, been working on dev server and compiler stuff, and super excited to get people's hands on the unstable dev server, which is about to be stable soon, hopefully. But yeah, part of making it stable is making sure it's like super dead easy to install and set up correctly. I'm hoping that a lot of what Kent is going through is just that he's used to the old way the dev server did things. And I think also one thing that's a little different is most dev servers for other frameworks, they control your actual server. And so the dev server is like your actual server and the dev server all in one. But in Remix, like we don't want that. We want to let you have your own server on the side, just like in production, and then do the dev things alongside that. So that's a little different, and I think that trips people up. So we can also maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I love that approach. I think that's the right way to go about doing this. Because it's just a lot more flexible. The world is messy, and we can't all just go all in on a specific thing, especially when we're talking about migrations and stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And what's cool too is, from what I can tell, the way that you're doing it makes it much easier to even run like multiple things. Like you have you make sure that you don't actually start the server until Remix has finished the build, and so you could and once that's finished, now you can spawn up your backend, and you can do some Docker thing. You could do all sorts of things, all kind of coordinated that way. I think that's cool. Anyway, yeah. So and on top of that, you get HMR and HDR, which is pretty sick. And you're going to be talking about that next week. Holy smokes, it's next week at RemixCon. So yeah, it's going to be sweet. So let me share my screen, and I can show you where I'm at so far.
Okay.
With things. Since I'm outside, I had to switch to light mode. I can't see my screen very well if it's in dark mode. But yeah, so I am. This is my server the file that is here. I gotta, man, this is why I should just do work on at home, because then I have dual monitors and I can put the Zoom stuff where it should go. But oh well. Yeah, so we've got our server here. I think I'll bump that up a little bit. And before, my package JSON had here, actually, it might be useful to be able to look at before and after. So let's do this, because this is all local changes. If we look at the package JSON before, my dev script would use npm run all. That's this run p run in parallel, both the dev server and Remix server. So dev server uses tsx watch. So tsx, so I can run TypeScript files and compile on demand. Bunch of flags to make it ignore the app directory, because the watch flag will make it restart my server, but I don't want it to restart my server whenever I change stuff in the app directory, because Remix will do that. I just care about it restarting my server pretty much when I change the like the only relevant files here are index. This is the one that I run, and the server file. I don't. There's not a lot going on in Express land, and so that's pretty much all I care to watch when I change those. Oh, and also the mocks. If I change anything in the mocks, I definitely want it to restart the server as well. And so that is what this script ensures. And then this, I'm hoping that I can get rid of this port is nothing flag. This just unsets the port. That'll be sweet. So yeah, then the other script runs remix.dev, which is responsible currently is responsible for just rebuilding what's in the build directory anytime the I make a change, and also because I have even before had the unstable dev server enabled, it also handled HMR and HDR and stuff. Working magically is amazing. So that's the way it was set up before. And what I have now in my halfway migration is I've moved or removed the dev script or the dev remix script, removed the run p command, and now I'm using the remix dev with the -c. I suppose that stands for command. And then npm run dev server, which now just I think I'm gonna have to restore the former glory of like I don't know. We'll see. I'd love to not have to do anything special with the TSX with all those flags I had before. But yeah. Another thing that's gonna make this more complicated probably. This is what I get for changing multiple things at once. But I also wanted to use the ESM native ESM support in the latest version.
Okay.
So yeah, so a couple changes there with the common.js. I think this is more context that's probably useful for folks. With the way that things work, Remix will build to the build directory, and then in here, I have this middleware goes into Remix and says, okay, here's the build directory. And so every time a request comes in, it forwards it on to Remix, but in development, it's going to purge the require cache first. So because this was common.js, we have the require cache. We can just find the require cache entry for the build file, delete that. And so when we come back in here to do this require, it gets the new built file rather than the previous version of that module, which adds a lot of complexity, but it gives like a HMR-like feel to the server. So the complexity that it adds is also probably relevant for everybody, and that is in my DB server. I don't want to when I delete the require cache, that doesn't delete all the objects that were in memory as part of that module. Those objects still exist. And so the database connection will still persist. And on top of that, I don't want to, I want to get rid of that database connection, but I also want to avoid having to reconnect to the database on every request, because that would be awful. It's basically like cold starts locally, which would be so stupid. And so to deal with that, I have this global variable that I set to the Prisma client. And so that way, if because those objects in memory remain in memory, even though we delete the require cache, the next time this file is required, it's going to say, oh, I've already got a connection. So let's not create or establish a new connection. And so that takes care of that problem. The problem there is if I actually change anything with how the connection happens, I have to restart my server. And so like there are just so many side effects to the way that I was doing this. Yeah. And I need a code comment. So anytime you see a code comment, you're like, something weird's going on.
A 4-liner too.
Yeah. Four whole lines to explain this garbage that I'm doing. So yeah, the purge require cache is sort of necessary. I got rid of it here. Yeah, so it's sort of necessary for what we're trying to do. Like the goal is a good one. I want to be able to change some server code and very quickly revalidate that the data that is on the page that I'm working on. That's the goal. The way that is accomplished before is not great, and I'd love to avoid it. So Pedro, can you talk about I think there are two ways that we solve this problem, two different ways.
Yeah, so I think maybe maybe we should talk about like the easy path that would be like the happy path that people should try first, and then we can talk about like if you want it all. If I want everything to be good, what should we do?
Yeah, so I've actually got I tried out let's not do that in the direct. Yeah, there we go. So I tried out the up-to-date version of the Express template that Jacob worked on. So I can pull that up and show people, because that's
Cool.
using the happy path, is it? Or
Yep.
is that, yeah.
But I mean, the happiest path is the Remix app server, because that just has like,
oh, right, yeah.
You'll see that the dev ready stuff that we talk about in a second, that's built into Remix app server. So that's just like dead easy. But I actually think the Express one's nice because it shows a little bit of the guts under the hood, just enough that you understand like what's going on.
Yeah, so I will do both of these then. So we can kind of compare. I guess this is just called Remix. I love this feature of Create Remix, by the way. Like being able to point to just a directory on any GitHub repo, that's sick. Okay.
Yeah, we're leaning into that even more for, I think we've been talking a little bit about like, what if you didn't specify a template, it just went straight to Remix app server, and otherwise you specify a template and there's no in between, because we kind of want to show that like the stuff that we give out of the box is just the same as your template. It's not different, right? Anyway, we've thought about that a little bit, but cool.
Okay, so here, this is the Remix app server.
Yep.
It's using unstable dev true, so like super happy path. It's not using ESM, but I don't think that's relevant for our discussion here. That it would work with, or it will work with ESM. It doesn't currently, is that right?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, Jacob knows more about that than I do, but yeah, the dev server is completely agnostic to that. It's just does what it does. So the cool thing about this template is it's literally the normal template that we have, and all you do is in Remix config, you turn unstable dev to true. That's the only change in this entire repo.
Yeah,
and then it works.
Yeah. So let's show some folks, because they may not know how great this is. So let me move this down to the bottom where I like it. I wish I could default that. So the NRD runs npm run dev. Sorry, I shouldn't use those. And then we go to localhost, and here we are. And I'm gonna go to my index, and we're gonna say here, let's stick these side by side so we can watch this happen, because it's so fast. You don't want to miss it. So I'll say exclamation point, and boom, there it is. Okay, so that's cool. Like, we've seen that before. No biggie. But then we stick in a loader. We say, yo, y'all, and then we get our data. Use loader data, all typed and everything, and then let's add a pre-JSON. Stringify the data null too. What's the second argument to JSON stringify? Null.
Okay. Undefined, but
so yeah, there's our data. That's hot module reload. You can watch the fave icon. No refreshing here, and then I can change this and save, and boom, we're getting that's HDR. That's server code changes. That's so cool.
It's so awesome. Cool. Okay, so let's actually look at the output in the console for like the terminal where you actually ran the dev server. Sorry, not the console.
Yeah, sure.
And I can show you a little bit of what's going on here just to like orient people. So basically,
I really liked that it shows what actually is happening here. This is cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. We can detect exactly what type of changes are happening. So if you go all the way up, the first thing that happens is we do an initial build, and that took 350 milliseconds, right? And then the dev server, for all intents and purposes, is like ready, right? But the app server, your like server.js or Remix app server, like still needs to like boot up with that build. So we run your actual app server. That's exactly right. And then you see that running on 3000. This is something that trips people up a little bit when they're starting to use a new dev server. You still want to visit like your app server's URL, right? Like when you set the port options for the dev server, those are like internal things for the dev server. That's not your app server, right? So if you want to control what port your app is running on, you do it the normal way. You go to like your Express server and you change the port there, and that's it. All of the config stuff for the dev server is like only for people who need to like open specific ports for SSL or like do Docker networking stuff, and they really need like fine-grained control of that stuff. But otherwise, you don't touch that stuff, right?
And you're using like detect port under the hood, so it can be totally random and it doesn't matter to me, right?
Yeah, like
so if I already have something running on that port, it'll use a different one.
Yeah, the contract right now is it'll just pick an open port. It happens right now
Mm,
to pick between the ranges of 3,000 and 4,000, but that's not the contract. The contract is any open port. So that's what you're
mm.
guaranteed. If you want a specific thing, you can set it. But now it's up to you to make sure that's not a conflict, right?
Yeah, yeah, super.
Mhm. Cool. So then what happens is when the app server spins up, it actually pings the dev server with a little like, I'm ready message, right? And that's what
Mm.
you see there. The app server took 131. Basically, that's from boot up of the app server to when it tells the dev server things are looking good, it took 131 milliseconds. And for the initial
Okay,
build,
so
that
to
kind of doesn't matter, but it's going to be
mm,
important for HMR stuff.
yeah, yeah, it will. So to be clear, the this comes from Remix, this comes from Remix, and the Remix dev. This is Remix dev, this is Remix dev. The logs are coming from that. This is
Mhm.
Remix dev. This is my app right here, right? That
Yeah,
the log came from my
and
app.
the logs are something we're going to put a lot of love into in the next release, which is we want to make it really clear, like all the Remix stuff is going to be really obvious that it's coming from Remix. It's going to be like timestamp, warn, or info, like Remix log, right? And all of your app server logs will just
Mm,
not have that
cool.
in front of it, so it'll be super easy to tell.
Mm, very cool. Okay, but
Mhm.
then this is again from the dev server, and now this is from my app.
Uh-huh.
Is that right? Cool.
That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
cool.
So then you made a change. And so we see the file change there and a rebuild happens. And now what the dev server is saying is like, hey, like the files are ready, but like what if you call an action or a loader in your UI, right? Like if I start sending those actions to your actual server, like things are going to be wonky. So I'm going to wait until your app server like reboots and is up to date. And the way we check the up to dateness is that little hash there, the FCD72, whatever. That's like the build hash.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is we reboot your server and that picks up the new build and it will actually, like I said, it'll ping that build hash to the dev server. And if the build hashes match, now the dev server knows, oh, like the app server is up to date, like it's ready to go. All its loaders are correct and everything. So I can start sending it things that need to be sent to it. And so that's what takes
Okay, so
120
hold on.
milliseconds there.
How does so let me restate what you said.
Mhm.
So um we made a change, and if somehow in the time between this change and this rebuild finishes, I send a loader request or something, the Remix dev server will wait, will force that loader to wait until the build is finished. Is that right?
Right now, it's a little bit dumber than that. We're gonna get to
Okay.
like high availability stuff later. Right now, it's just like a
Okay.
rebuild happened, and again, happy path. We'll talk about how to manage this on your own with the no restart flag later. But happy
Mm,
path, easy case, we'll just like kill the process that had your app server in it, right? So like
mm,
server.js gets killed, and we respin it back up. And when it comes back
yeah.
up, it's going to come back up with a new build, and it's going to ping the dev server and say like, "Hey, I'm now on this build version." And so there's a little bit of downtime there where if you did
Mm,
use an action or a loader, or if you like hard refresh during that time, like you're going to get a 404, like some weird things are going to happen, right? And
yeah.
again, like
Yeah.
there's fancy things we can do to make that not the case, but that's like such an edge case. We haven't really tackled that
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah. Exactly. That's why I was a little surprised. So yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Mhm.
And it would be cool to solve for that. But like, if you're gonna hit a loader in dev, you the one user in
Mhm.
147 milliseconds. Okay, sure. Well, plus the 120 that it took to start up the server again. But
Mhm.
yeah, right. Like already from this, you instantly don't have the global problem. You no longer need to do global dot, Prisma connection or whatever. But you do introduce the startup time problem.
Mhm.
And so if your app takes a little while to start up, then this app server is going to be 500 milliseconds. And so now HDR and HMR takes 500 milliseconds. That's just foreshadowing for a problem we'll solve later.
Yeah, and actually, HMR in theory shouldn't wait for the app server at all because we're actually serving the assets from the dev server. We're like overriding the public path of the built dev server
Oh,
thing. And
interesting.
so the assets actually come from the dev server, which is always up. So if you're just doing asset things and not loaders and actions, you can just always do stuff, which is super awesome. Like there's
Oh,
no
yeah,
downtime.
that's sweet.
But there's a
Yeah.
little tiny bug right now where we're calling revalidate unnecessarily sometimes for HMR. We're basically doing HDR when we don't need to a couple times. We're going to fix that. But because of that, right now, I haven't made the optimistic HMR change that can just like not wait for the app server. So right now it's like waiting because of this bug. In the future, that 120 seconds, 120 milliseconds for HMR is not going to be there at all.
Yeah, that is sick. Yeah, super big fan. Like especially when we change server code, we're actually like we kind of expect it to take longer than HMR. So yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, super fan.
Cool. And so, yeah, that's basically what's happening here. And if you look at the source code for Remix Serve, you'll find that we're going to call this special function called broadcast dev ready. But really all it's doing is it's just saying like, what's the origin of the dev server? And I'm just going to send to that origin /ping with the payload of the build hash. Like it just sends the build hash over to the dev server through HTTP in a little JSON payload. It's like super, super simple. Actually, when I was developing this feature, I was actually doing curl to like send that over when I knew the build had finished correctly, right? It's like super dead simple. So that's all it's doing. And so we provide a little convenience function to send that curl for you, basically, that like through a fetch. But that's all that's happening there is the app server is just doing that. And then if you scroll down, you can see that we detected, loader changes for the next build. And so we did HDR as well. And one limitation I'll talk about right now is that right now we're only detecting changes to the loader in the route file. We're not doing like recursive changes to like if you import it. Stuff. We will be doing that. It's just we haven't, that's going to be there as part of stable, but not something we're doing yet. So we're kind of faking it a tiny bit there for demo purposes and testing purposes, but that'll be more robust once we stabilize it.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I think that's the simple, easy path case. As you can see, like there's really nothing to be done here except unstable dev. And so if you are, as of today, if you are just using Remix Serve, so the Remix dev server, then all you have to do is say unstable dev. With the current but temporary limitation that I believe you cannot do type module here yet, but that should be like pretty soon resolved. So I don't think anybody's.
Yeah, I wasn't even aware of that. I think that's something that Jacob's been working on, but yeah.
Yeah, like it's literally there's in the Remix server there's a require that just needs to be changed to import based on this config. Yeah, like it's nothing. So sweet. Cool. Okay, so that's that one. Should we go to the Express one now?
Yeah, we can do this one quickly just because we've already kind of covered most of the stuff, but there's just one or two little things in there that I think are interesting.
Yeah, okay, cool. So the Express one, you're still doing unstable dev. Here it's ESM, so that's neat. The server is doing this import build, and here's the broadcast ready and stuff. So what do you want me to?
Yeah, can we look at the package JSON first just to look at that?
Yeah. And
so here we're using the -c flag because we're using a custom server. So if you don't specify -c, it'll just assume you're using Remix app server. But we want to run server.js instead, so that's what we're doing. And you can notice that we're not passing in node-env equals development anymore because the Remix dev server will just force that to be the case and warn you when it's not.
That's great.
Weirdly, CI sometimes sets node-env to the string development or the string undefined, but not
like JSON stringified.
No, sorry, development. I was misremembering. Development is fine. Sometimes it sets it to the string undefined instead of not setting it, which is super weird. I think that's just a GitHub CI thing, or maybe it's a Playwright thing. Anyway, whatever. Weird. The point is, you pass in your server command there. So that's the only change we had to make in package JSON for this one. You already showed in Remix config, we just enabled it. And so that's just enabled. And then the last change we have to make is in our server. I mentioned before, like when your app starts up, it has to tell the dev server it's ready. And that's what we're doing with the broadcast dev ready function. So if you scroll down all the way to the listener, after the app starts listening, if we're doing development, we just tell the dev server, hey, we're ready. And the way that this works is because this is actually spun up as a subprocess. So you saw the -c flag in the package JSON. that tells the Remix dev server to spin up your app server as a subprocess. It passes along a special environment variable called, let me see if I remember, Remix dev HTTP origin, all with like underscores in between. And so that way the broadcast dev ready function like knows where the dev server is and just does that.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Yeah, here's the, yep, there it is.
Yep. And you can always override that. The second argument is the origin. So if you are doing like weird Dockery things with networking and SSL and whatever, and you just want to like force the origin for the dev server to be something, you can just set that there. But by default, it'll use the pass down environment variable.
Yeah, so I saw this log dev ready. Can you explain why that function is there?
So you'd think that being able to call fetch is now like a universal thing, right? Like every runtime can do that, and it's great, right? So we implemented it with fetch, and then we realized that actually in the new experimental Cloudflare local runtime, so like if you want to do like local dev with Cloudflare, it's not allowed to call fetch. And so we're like, oh shoot, how do we like tell the dev server that we're ready if we can't call fetch? And then we realized, oh, we're running the app server as a subprocess, so we have access to its standard in and standard out. So we'll just make it log when it's ready, and we'll detect that. So this is kind of like a little hack for Cloudflare. But this is like the power of, you have two processes that are independent. That's like a Unix thing to do, is like, how do you communicate?
Yeah,
you console log. Like that's exactly the Unix way.
Standard out.
Yep,
that's cool. Cool, good stuff. So I say, hey, I'm ready. Here's my build, and the earlier when we were or the way that I'm doing this currently is I'm doing a dynamic require, because I want to be able to purge or require cache and stuff. We don't have to do that here because this just gets restarted every time. So this will it's a brand new process, restarts and everything. So we can just import it directly and pass it directly to broadcast dev ready. So that's cool.
And so just to summarize here, like your app server is just running the way it normally runs. And then the dev server is sitting on the side, and it's basically intercepting the asset requests and serving those. So like if you disable JS, for example, all those JS files, all those chunks that go up to your browser, those get served by the dev server in when you're doing dev, right? And that's just so we can keep like things running smoothly, a little bit easier. The other thing that the dev server is doing is it's running the compiler in watch mode. And so whenever like the app directory changes and it picks up those changes, it'll cause a rebuild. And it's also like sending through a WebSocket to the browser. It's sending HMR and live reload messages to the browser. So we have a little tiny JS runtime in your browser that listens to those and knows whether to refresh or call React refresh or whatever, right?
Okay, so I got a question about that. Before I ask, I just thought, like, there are people watching this stream on YouTube right now, and I don't pay attention to YouTube comments because they inevitably get into either racist territory or something, or some links to spam. So if you want to ask questions, then join my Discord. I don't think there's a link in the description, but just look KCD Discord, you'll find it. And I've got a live chat or a live stream channel in there, and there's a thread for this live stream. So go there and I'll check that. And if you have any questions for Pedro. Okay, but my question, while people are doing that, is I'm interested in how the interception works with the assets. So I've got my app server, and my app server is the one, see it right here. I'm the one doing this express static stuff. So how does the dev server intercept those?
Yeah, so intercept is like conceptually the way to think about it, but we're not actually doing any proxying or anything. All we're doing is when we run the compiler, the Remix compiler, to do a build, we're setting the public path to point to the dev server.
Oh, so that's happening, like there's integration within Remix then?
Yes. Yeah. So the dev server, when it says, hey, I'm going to start like running and doing a bunch of builds and rebuilds, it tells the compiler that's running in watch mode. It like spins up the compiler in watch mode. It tells it, hey, please set the public path to this other thing. Like ignore whatever is in the config, just set it to this thing.
So if I look at my network tab, then I should see that. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So you'll see
So
it's
if I
probably going to go to port 3001 or
303,
3003 or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, huh, yeah, that's clever. I like
And
that.
so it's nice because we're not proxying. So we're not having any overheads of proxying there for all the things we don't care about.
Mhm.
Super, super lightweight. And so specifically, like I said, it's just doing the assets inside of build right now. There's actually a little bug I'm trying to fix right now where things that aren't in slash build, but are like slash fonts, like public assets that aren't like remix assets. We forgot to add like things for that. So we need to fix that. But so if your SVGs or your fonts are like messed up in the new dev server, that's why. So
Okay.
that's just oops.
Yeah,
Quick oopsie
that'll
that we need to
probably
fix.
that that will be a problem for me. I've got a
Yeah.
workshop tomorrow and I've got fonts. So yeah, dang. I'll have to
Yeah.
figure out something for that.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
but
mean,
yeah, that'll be fixed.
yeah, it's literally just like in the dev server source code. I just need to add like a use, slash fonts and or like slash, if things are not matched, like go to public and grab them, right? It's like super easy. I just forgot to do it. So
yeah, there's no chance we could get a hot fix today, could we?
maybe. Yeah, I could probably land that. I mean,
If I don't want to put any pressure on you. If that can't work, then I
it's
will
already on my
figure out
list.
something
So,
else.
if it helps to be prioritized, that's pretty easy, I think.
It
I
it
just have to
definitely would
double
help.
check. Okay. I just have to double check that like the logic is as easy as I think it is, where it's like if you were going to 404 instead, serve it from public or whatever, right? Like, because I don't know if there's any conflicts there with other routes because it's not under slash build, right? It's under like slash fonts or whatever. I think it's really easy, but don't hold me to that until I
It should,
it
yeah, it should all be under slash public, but like as the default. So if it's under slash public, you're probably pretty safe to
yeah.
just or like I guess you could just say if you were going to 404, then send it to the dev server or to the app server. I think that would be sufficient.
I think it's just I just have to remember if the public stuff is preferred above routes or below routes. I forget, like I think it's above, but I just have to remember that. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Anyway.
Yeah. So does that answer your question, Kent? You said?
Yes, yeah, that makes total sense. And I think it's actually pretty elegant, a pretty cool solution.
Yeah. Cool. So now let's talk about what happens if like we're restarting the server by just killing the process and restarting it every rebuild. Like, what if I don't want that? One reason you might not want that is actually there's a bug right now in waiting for it to kill, because apparently a wait kill doesn't wait for it to be killed. It awaits for the kill signal to be sent, and there's a race condition there. Anyway, that's on my plate. I'm going to fix that. But if you run into like, port is already taken 3000, like your app port is already taken, it's because we're trying to restart your thing and the old thing is still running. And so that's a bug that we're fixing. But even if that was fixed, you still might say like, hey, I don't want to restart it. It's too slow. Like NodeMon is faster at restarting than like killing the processor or not. So maybe just like a tiny perf when you want it. Or maybe like you're wanting to like do stuff that persists across rebuilds, right? So if you want something like that, there should probably be a way to do that. And so let's talk about like that kind of power user feature that we have. So in the ideal world, what you would have is you would have true server-side HMR, that when you change like a little bit of your server, only that part gets like dynamically loaded into your running server and things keep running. And you don't need to do the global trick that you're doing at all. Like it'll just know that these files over here weren't touched. So all that stuff is just kept. And only these files get, wiped out and rerun or whatever. And that's actually not hard to implement in CJS. And you can implement it in ESM, but there's no way to clear old things from the import cache. So you're eventually going to run out of memory if you do that. But like, also that's the way that Vite and Remix do HMR for the browser, and no one complains about running out of memory on the browser. So maybe it's fine. I don't know. Like maybe. Anyway, that's a digression. The point is like, you basically want server-side HMR, but because of all the things I just mentioned, it's not super trivial to implement. Something that's easier to implement and is almost just as good is purging the require cache, just like the whole thing. And so that's what you're doing. And that lets you, persist things across rebuilds and across navigations and everything. But you have to use the global trick. So there's the trade-off, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's okay. Like maybe it's worth it for you to do that. So that's why we have the -- no restart flag. And so that just tells the Remix dev server when rebuilds happen, instead of restarting this process, just let me handle it. Okay. So the stuff that's in the -c, like node server, that is handling picking up changes to the server now when you say -- no restart. So like I said, one trivial way you could do that is you run nodemon, but like that's sort of what we're doing conceptually anyway. So like maybe you don't care. But if your server.js is doing purge require stuff, then you want this, right?
Okay.
And now the only trade-off here is when changes are picked up, it's your responsibility to call dev ready with the new build. You have to tell the dev server, hey, I've updated, like I have got the new hash.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. It might be easier to do this within the context of an existing app. So I kind of like mess things up in Rocket Rental, but let's do this. We will do a git stash on this thing. Starting over. So let's say I'm upgrading for the first time today. Locally, or in my node modules, I actually do have the latest version of Remix, so I'm not going to bother updating these.
Okay.
But yeah,
so you're on 16.
Assume I already updated these. Yeah, I'm on
Yeah.
16. Here, we'll just update these numbers to make things happy.
Okay.
So then the next thing that I do is I get my dev server or dev remix. That's no longer a thing. My dev scripts no longer needs to set this, and yeah, like that whole thing doesn't need to be there. We say remix dev no restart, and command is npm run dev server. Yes, thank you, compile.
And I think you're missing a T on restart.
And then yes, thank you. Okay, cool. So that, and then my dev server script stays the same because it was already doing restart stuff, and my my server has this purge require cache set up. And the way that I do that is I call it for every request, because I don't actually know when a change has occurred. So it would be cool if there was a way for me to be informed when a change has occurred. And I don't know if that's a thing that Remix can offer. I could do my own Chukadar thing. That actually would probably be a better way to do this. But
yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking, is if you do Chukadar and you watch for the build directory changing, then you know the server's changed. And then you can purge require cache and do a new stuff. Yeah. And there's actually an example of this in the release notes. Do you want to actually just pull up the release notes really quick?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I made the mistake of not reading the release notes, and yeah, that was a bad mistake.
No worries.
Yeah, you got it right there, Chukadar. Sweet. I'll just grab that.
So I haven't actually tested that code. That's just like, I wrote that without testing it. So your mileage may vary, but I think it's the right thing.
Something like this. Okay, so we've got, do I have Chukadar in here? No, not yet. Okay, import Chukadar from Chukadar. And did I spell that right?
I think so. And just to orient people, like before what was going on, which was a very standard Remix thing that we were doing in all of our templates that we're doing purge require cache, is we were purging the require cache on every request, which meant not only did you lose things across rebuilds, but you actually lost in-memory stuff across navigations, which was like really annoying, right? Like even if you made no code changes, you would lose things. So that's not the right way to be doing that. We were only doing that because we hadn't solved a race condition in our old dev stuff. Now we've solved all that stuff. So now we have like a very clear way of knowing when the build happens and when you should purge a require cache. So instead of doing this all the time because we're kind of scared of not doing it right, we can call it exactly when it's needed, which is when the build directory changes.
Yeah, that is sweet. So that means also that I can get rid of it right here.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You
so
can
that's
get rid of
sweet.
that whole node env development block. Yep.
I don't, can I? Because I do need to require it dynamically at request time, in case it changed from one request to the next. Is that right? Because if I do it
Oh
here,
yeah,
then
yeah,
that
yeah,
will,
yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You need to,
cool.
well, okay. Yes, yes, you do.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay.
yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. That's not painful at all.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, like it probably wouldn't be too bad of a thing to just go with this and just say, like, this is fine. It's not optimal because this create request handler is doing some things, but yeah. So I probably
Yeah,
like this.
I'm wondering if maybe outside of the app.all, you could have a mutable reference to build. And
Mm-hmm.
I just don't remember how many things inside of create request handler like look at the build once and then save it off versus like use it dynamically.
Mm,
Anyway, that's a bigger
yeah,
thing. I don't want
yeah,
to open that
yeah,
can of worms, but there might be a way to make that more concise. You also probably
yeah.
for the watcher, you probably want to add like on when things get added, like files get added as well, not just change.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah. So probably just all.
sure.
Yeah. Okay,
Yep.
great. So and then we also probably need to do this broadcast ready when it actually is ready. So right here.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll say require builder.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and again, I haven't done ESM yet, so maybe we can look at how this would look with ESM. But for right
Okay.
now, I think we should be in a good spot.
Yeah.
Let's run dev. Oh yeah, we've got some changes here. We can deal with those later. Oh, now this one's interesting. So since I have MSW installed, I am, yeah, this one's interesting. So I've got MSW server running, and this is going to intercept all fetch requests made by my server. This is
Mm-hmm.
really handy for not actually sending emails and stuff like that. However, it seems to be intercepting this broadcast dev ready, which makes total sense that it would do that. And actually, you know what? Yeah, that's fine. So I need to set up a way to mock that. What makes it tricky is the port number is going to be different, potentially. Like it's an implementation detail. I'm
So
not
your
sure
whole
how to
server
deal with this.
has the remix dev HTTP origin environment
Oh, that
variable set.
environment
So you
variable.
can use that.
Ah, okay, yeah, that makes tons of sense. So REST, is this a post that it's
Yes.
making? Okay, and so it's the process the remix dev
HTTP
server.
origin. Yep.
Okay,
And then it's going to be
um,
hitting /ping on there.
okay. Here we'll just blah invariant. Uh, okay, that should be good. We'll clean this up later. Okay, so then we have our request here, or actually, yeah, and then there's a way to forward it. I can't remember. Pong. Okay, fine. What is it? I think I'm doing it in my site. So
I would have assumed there'd be a way to just be like, don't
yeah, there
handle this one.
is. I just can't remember how to do it.
Okay.
So
I
here,
guess I
there's
just assumed you could
index.
just say like post to this URL, let it go through. And you wouldn't have
Yeah,
to
there it
like
is.
type it. But okay.
Yeah, you do this pass through thing. Yeah, cool. Okay, so that should solve that. I can clean this up
Mhm.
later. And coming back here, let's start it all over, get rid of all that output. Okay, building, built in 2 seconds, waiting for app server, muck server installed, app server took 1.6, 3000 is not available because I tried something stupid. So let me fix that. Oh, whoops, and try that again. Okay, sweet. We have liftoff. And now let's go here. Find yourself in outer space. Awesome. Looks great. Oh yeah. So this is something I saw yesterday. I am getting a GET request to what looks like code. Yeah, some CSS code
Huh.
serialized in the URL. I have no idea what that could be.
That's
But yeah,
very odd.
yes, very odd indeed. I have no idea where that
Failed
came
to
from.
decode
So
param. Okay.
yeah, I don't know where that came from. Yeah, I can see where the request is. I wonder if I mean, clearly the browser's making this request, so maybe we can see
Yeah.
where the request is coming from. Bad request. Yeah, that it's pretty bad. So here, let's do a little. We'll spend less than 2 minutes on this, but just do
All right.
a
All right.
little bit of thing here. Let's see. This, if it contains this, then it probably is the one we're looking for. No? Okay. Well, that's kind of annoying.
Do you want to look at in the network tab? There should be like it
Mm.
should point to like which chunk it's coming from or whatever, right? Oh, it's just a style
Initiator.
sheet
Yeah.
thing. Interesting.
Yeah. So this is coming from the dev server.
Uh-huh.
And presumably, yeah, I don't know.
Oh. I wonder.
Here we go. So there's the stuff. I bet that's in a source. Aha, href. Boom. So we are somehow getting the contents of a CSS file in the href of a link. That's probably, you know what? I think I know what that is. I know what that is. I forgot. So one thing that I was doing before this upgrade, this is a breaking change for me because I was doing something weird. And I had a vendor.css. That is now a vanilla extract thing. So if I do vendor-css instead, then I think that should solve that problem. I forgot about that. Yeah, doing some weird stuff. So let's try this again. Yay, that's fixed that problem.
Nice.
Good. Okay. Yeah, just weird stuff I was doing. Okay. Good. Okay, so we've got this going. Now, if I come over here and I say, let's make a change to the header above the nav, say, hello. Come over here. That hello should show up. There it is. We see we've got logs in here, component changed, update accepted. We get our logs here that say file changed, rebuilt. Yeah, my builds take forever. That'd be another thing to look at. I don't know why my builds take so long.
Yeah, so I could talk about that just for a second. So
yeah,
one thing that we changed in the compiler that only the new dev server is using right now is that we're actually stripping out the loader with a transform. We used to like rely on tree shaking to make sure that the like server code didn't make it up into the browser, but we're kind of unhappy with that because we want to just be more robust. So we're like, okay, let's use a transform and just rip it out, and there's no way it can end up there, right? That works great. Turns out transforms that need to parse the whole AST and do stuff are slower than just like writing a file and letting ES build bundle things. That's fine though. It's not that much slower. It's just that we don't have it optimized at all. So for rebuilds, especially, we already know we can do some caching. There's already a PR by a community member that caches that stuff for you. So on rebuilds, it like doubles it makes it twice as fast, basically. And again, we've done like nothing to optimize this stuff. And that's like where we're going to sink our teeth into before, like we've now established like, this is the way the dev server is architected. And now we're moving on to bug fixes and perf. So hopefully that should get a lot faster.
Yeah, that's good. And actually, I'm thrilled to hear that. I know originally I liked that there was less magic. There was no transforms and stuff, but I actually really like that we're doing that now, because it will hopefully lead to fewer problems with having to do a .server file all over the place.
Yeah, it's funny. I keep waffling back and forth between like, Rich Harris is right, we need a server file, and then like, no, we need to co-locate. Like I keep waffling. So
yeah,
we'll
well,
see.
when we get there's that module expression proposal that the TC39 is currently, I think it's maybe stage 1 or 2. But yeah, you can write a module within a module. And there are other languages got this forever. And I think that would be really cool. We'd say, here's a module, this is my server stuff, and here's another module, here's my server and client stuff. Like that'd be pretty interesting to get that from a syntax level. And then TypeScript can be made aware of that and say, oh, this is a server side module. So here it doesn't have access to window and document and stuff. And then here's the client and UI and and server stuff that can have access to both. That would be really interesting.
Jacob's actually doing some mad scientist stuff recently, which, no promises, but he thinks there might be a way to use like RSC-ish things to like never even send that stuff at all. Like, I don't know. We'll see. But it sounds like it could. I don't know. I'm always like, I doubt that. And then Jacob like makes it happen somehow. I'm like, okay, so
yeah. Yeah, seriously. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so yeah, this is good. I'm thrilled to hear that the builds will get faster, because I have noticed my HMR is not super fast. Like save, and now it's gone. So yeah, making those rebuilds faster will be nice.
So rebuilds faster in general, and then also not waiting for the app server at all when HMR needs to run will be like really nice.
Yeah, super. Okay. Awesome. And that's all it took.
Your app server is actually really fast, though. It's like under 300 milliseconds to pick up the changes. So yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah. It's and we're purging the require cache, but we do still have the global nonsense that we have to do. Yeah. So it seems that if you want to persist across rebuilds, then you have to do the no restart, and you have to do the global stuff. Like there's no getting around that.
Well,
is that
there's kind of 3 tiers. So the first tier is, I used to use all this magic because I hated getting things wiped across navigations. That is completely solved. You just rip all that stuff out. That's no longer a problem. We persist things across navigations. Okay, the next problem is I want to persist stuff across rebuilds. And there you can stick to your purge require cache stuff. The upgrade to that is you can just implement actual server-side HMR. And you can actually, like, it's easy if you know the ins and outs of ES Build to do that. It's pretty hard if you don't, but like it's actually something that I implemented HMR from scratch client side, but it's the same logic as you would need for server side with ES Build. And I have a repo for that if anyone wants to just like crib off of that. But basically you just use ES Build to crawl your dependency tree. So like this thing imports from that, this thing imports from that. And then you have a watcher that looks for a file, and then you consult the dependency tree to be like, okay, which things need to be like regotten now that this thing is updated. And if you just build that out, you could have the best of all worlds, right? You could have server-side HMR where, the things inside of the file you're changing do get wiped, but the things in all the other files don't get wiped, and you don't need to do the global trick at all. And that's really nice. And then the super awesome idea would be, if you're in a functional programming language, you could do this at the function level instead of at the file level, but obviously we're not doing that. So, we're limited to modules in JavaScript, but yeah,
that's very interesting. I think it's perfectly reasonable to do it at the file level. So the HMR that you're talking about, server-side HMR, is that something that could be built into Remix in the future?
No, because we don't control your app server. If you're using CJS or ESM, and that's your choice, like it's a different implementation. And what if you're, like, okay, now what if you're using Dino? Like, okay, now we have to do something else. And like, so maybe we could give examples of it or whatever, but it's kind of, the stance we're taking is the app server is yours. So that's your responsibility. And, I could imagine that community members would like make 1 or 2 things and they would work for 99% of use cases. That might be a good way to go.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how intrusive is HMR, like that HMR thing? on the app? Is it just something you configure it in like where your app server starts, or is this something that you have to do in many of your files, or like you have to opt into it with like module.hot accept and stuff? Or
Yeah, so you don't need to do module.hot and all that stuff. That's for like super fine grained control. Like the vanilla version of HMR that I have. Actually, do you want to pull it up? Maybe
yeah,
that'll.
let's do. I bet people listening are like, I want to see that repo.
Yeah. So you can go to
Uh,
Picatori
is
is the username. Yeah,
okay.
cool. And then
And
HMR
then,
from scratch. You can see it there.
oh, nice.
Only 1 star. Hopefully, more people.
Move this. Boom. On star number 2.
So
Okay,
so
sweet.
this is actually a
Here,
repo that
I'll
I'm
put this.
making. Yeah.
I'm just gonna put this in the live chat for this episode.
Cool. So this is a repo that I'm making. This is like the code behind an egghead course that I'm planning to make.
Oh, cool.
But basically, this is like, I want to take you through, you start with a static file server, and then you just add one thing at a time. You're like, okay, I don't want to have to hit refresh myself. Okay, let's add that. Well, now I want the code change just to automatically go up. Okay, and so you incrementally build up towards like full HMR.
Hey, that's cool. So I can just look at step 4 HMR and see
Mhm.
what you did for HMR. Nice.
Yep.
Okay.
And so
So
specifically,
you got this HMR thing.
yeah, it's like big and hairy, which is like why it's kind of it's not conceptually hard, but it's a decent amount of code to understand. The main
But you
idea,
could
though,
put this dev kit in like a package, right? Like this isn't app specific, is it?
this one specifically is implementing HMR for the browser. The server
Oh,
side
okay.
version is actually easier though, because you just don't need to serialize things. You can just do the things locally. The main idea is, instead of actually running Node on like your code, you run Node on this little runtime, this little JS script that all it does is it inspects your code, loads in all of that as like data. It doesn't actually run it until it's ready, and then it runs it. And then when changes happen, since it has your code as data, it knows how to like pull in and pull out the different modules and then rerun the tree again. That's like the main idea. So
Okay.
yeah, and you can see here like how it's doing it on line 42. It's like, hey, crawl the dependencies for this file. These are the modules that need a change based on this file changing. So, set those and then send an event that says, these are the changed things. Right? And again, this is complicated by the fact that we're serializing things and sending them over the wire for client side actually a better place to look is if you look in HMR folder and you look at runtime TS. Yeah. So this is like the thing that actually does the HMRing. So basically what we do is we define a require function so that we can like hook into like the require semantics. So instead of like require actually pulling in code, we're like, actually, no, I want to use the require whenever require is called on stuff to build a graph of the dependencies, right? So that's what that's doing. And if you scroll down, yeah, this is sending stuff over this socket or whatever. And we have this apply update. And so apply update says, hey, something got added. Okay, let's add that to our module. So we literally have like an object that just has a module ID to a module, like to the code of that module as text, right? And then we call like eval on it when we need to run it, basically, right?
Yeah.
That's how it's working. So you're taking on that responsibility, which is like, now you're evaling code and dealing with it as text. And now if you're doing TypeScript stuff, like you have to compile it in a way that like will run here. Like it's a big onus, right? So that's why you might not want to do this and just use the purge require cache stuff. But if you really want granular updates and not using the global stuff, this is like the sort of stuff you'd have to do.
I feel like this is something that could be generalized to cover most people's use cases. And then it's something that I just import into my server, like up here at the top. Say, import HMR from your username /HMR remix or whatever. And then just say HMR and be done with it. Is there?
Yeah, I mean, HMR wants to actually look at the server files themselves. I mean, yeah. You could maybe do it that way. I haven't really thought about it too much.
Well,
But
I
basically,
do
it
have,
needs to be told like what the code files it needs to manage are. So you can give it like a path to the app directory or whatever, like the entry point, and then it'll crawl those dependencies.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So it actually needs like the app directory.
Yeah,
Not
the app
not
directory. That makes, yeah. So it'd be like HMR after / entry server. Whatever.
Yeah, it'd be something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then this would return to you probably like a runnable thing or something. No, I guess it could. No, it probably just is a side effectful thing. It's doing the running for you. It would like detect the changes and rerun the thing for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
it's tricky because like, don't you want to hook into it running in here? Like, don't you want to only run it after you've set up your, like, there's some codependencies between what HMR is doing and what this file, like on line 17 and whatever is doing, right? There's a little bit of codependency there. I'm sure we can figure it out. It's just not something I've thought about up front.
Yeah. It feels like this is doable. I remember there's on my YouTube channel, if you go back like 6 or 7 years, I had a tech chat with somebody who had gotten HMR working with Webpack on the server. And I can't remember much about it because I barely understood it then. Yeah, so I feel like we should be able to do this. And I would love to have that, because I just think that would just be really, really nice to have your cake and eat it too. Be able to not have to do the global nonsense, but still not have to restart the server. Now, another solution is to just go with the restart the server and make your app start up really fast and use it like proper persisted caching. There, like, I mean, there are
you could still use something. I think NodeMon actually is a little bit faster than like killing the process and coming back up. So if you wanted to, or like node -- watch on the latest node is probably faster. So you could use that to get fast rebuilds, right? So I'm just building off of what you're saying. And then you would just need to save your stuff persistently, so not in memory. Right? Like on a file or something, or an SQLite or something like that.
Kind of, I'll think more about that. But this is super helpful for me to understand like the different options that we have for our dev server and how it works. I love this broadcast dev ready. I think that is pretty dang simple. I like the asset interception stuff. I think that makes tons of sense, and I'm really looking forward to things being faster. To go back to the current bug with with that specifically, you don't have to do a hot fix today. I'll just go backwards a version or two for my workshop. It's but fine.
I want people to use it. I'm like so motivated. We'll see.
Well,
we'll see.
If you get it out today, then I will upgrade, and that's what I'll teach for my workshop tomorrow. But I'm teaching the same workshop at RemixConf next week, and I'll definitely use the latest if you get that fixed.
Last thing to mention is that if your server is a TS file, and I think you were running into this earlier, if you try to import the build and like pass it to
broadcast
dev ready, you're going to get like type issues, right?
Okay. So this is what I was doing before. I did this type assertion to avoid this problem, but let's say we don't do that. Then yes, where is it? Where's the build? Where did that go? That's weird. I'm not sure where that error went, because it definitely was erroring before. Let's see what happens now.
Interesting.
Well, it seems to be fine with it, but that is super strange.
In either case, we do want to start exposing publicly the types for like the remix files, like assets and config and server build. So if you ran into that, you could just import those later. But right now we don't expose those. So
yeah. So is the plan to basically just add a index.v.ts right next to it or something?
Um, I don't know actually.
Because that would solve the problem. Is just generate the type definitions for the file.
Yeah, we can certainly do that for the server build, which is I think what you would mostly want it for. Yeah, that'd be easy. I think we want to just expose those as a package, even just for us, because there's a ton of places we reference it. And right now across packages, we like copy paste things because it's doesn't have a good place to live yet. So even for us, we're going to do it anyways. So if you want to just use those, you can. But yeah, we can also generate the .t.ts so you don't have to like manually set that. It'll just like come out of the box.
Well, I am already able to import the server build from Remix Run node, and that's how I'm accomplishing this thing.
Yeah, the issue is not all the places that we define server build are they consistent. So I think the node one is like mostly correct, but not quite. And the server runtime one is more correct, but is missing something. So yeah, we need to like.
Oh dang, yeah.
Yeah. We're gonna fix that, but that's another thing. Yeah. Do you want to just wrap up maybe by if we look at the options for in the release notes for the dev server, just to like go over those really quick?
Yeah, sure. And we didn't really talk too much about the ESM version of this. But if you wanted to be able to do the purge require cache, this turns into a wait dynamic import. And then the build path would need like a query string just to update to the version or something.
And again, like that's something where if you do enough changes, your memory usage will go up. No one seems to care about that for the browser HMR stuff. So go for it.
Yeah, but I actually like when you purge the require cache, does that free up memory? I don't think it does.
That's a good question. I thought it did, but I mean, it might not immediately, but yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's probably quite a bit of memory that's freed up. But I wonder, yeah, it'll be an interesting experiment. I think I probably will try a couple things, but hopefully somebody watching is going to do the HMR for the server thing that we were talking about, and then we just use that.
Yep.
So, and that would work. Would that work with ESM? Because that's doing it's doing module eval stuff, right?
Yeah. So the way that the HMR stuff I have in my repo is working is it's using the fact that requires a function to like set the value, like it basically sets require to be something else and then runs the file so that I can like look into that. With import, if you're doing like statically analyzable imports and not dynamic imports, like you can't do that, but you can do the query string stuff. That's like the alternate way of doing things, right? So yeah, I haven't tried it. There's probably some easy way to do it.
Well, and there's like things like import loaders and stuff that people can magic their way into. I don't know how people do that stuff.
I really haven't delved into ESM magic import land yet.
Well, and if you're, I wonder, yeah, somebody work on that, please. That would be great. Okay, anyway, let's talk about some of these options.
Cool. So basically, the only two options that most people should use are command, which pretty much everyone who's not using Remix Serve should be using. And then if you're doing purge require cache, you should use no restart. And everything else is just for controlling stuff if you are setting up SSL or, like I said, Docker networking, and you really need like, oh, I'm only allowed to open up this one port on my company's server and blah, 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 right? Then you use these. But these do not set anything for your app server. Your app server is still running however it was running. These are all for the dev server. And so just want to reiterate that because I think a lot of people have been using this and being like, oh, my app is still running on 3000. And it's like, yes, you have to change your app separately if you want that, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah,
I actually think that separation's good. And we've got the unstable dev. You can specify those in unstable dev. What I actually do have a couple options specified. See, what did I have? Yeah, so this app server port, that's old, right?
That's old. That's gone.
Yeah. This is what I get for using unstable stuff. Whoops, what did I just do?
So now that's just using
started a loom.
It's
I'm pretty sure I can just do true, and that should solve that.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep,
I
the
don't think I
port
need
stuff
to
is
specify
gone.
any options. Yeah,
Mhm.
sweet.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
if you
that's
didn't
good.
want to pass in the flags, you can use a config. But I think for most people, using the -c in their package JSON is a little bit more explicit. So I recommend that.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Cool. Let's see. I think that's everything that I had a question about. So I think what I'm going to end up doing, I think I'm going to ditch the ESM pursuit for now. It's not
Mhm.
that important. It really doesn't make any difference to my life, whether my server is running CJS or ESM. So I'm
Yeah.
going to go with the easier route and use CJS. Um,
Yeah, if you want to keep
and
using your purge require stuff, you need to do
yeah,
that.
yeah. So I'll fix that later. And then yeah, this is definitely an improvement though. Well, I lost it, but the Chokedar stuff, that's a huge improvement. Not having to re-require the build directory on every request. That'll be
Mhm.
huge. And yeah, I'm actually thinking because Prisma has their new JSON protocol thing that's supposed to make cold starts way fast, and so I'm actually starting to think maybe I can get away with just restarting the server because I'm only using a global thing for my event emitter for live chat, and I'm pretty sure with being able to use Chokedar that well like the fact is I need that live chat feature to work after the server reboots anyway. Like I deployed a new thing. I don't want my users to like have to refresh the browser for
Mhm.
their live chat to work. So I need to be able to like revalidate those HTTP things when the connection closes anyway. So the more I think about this, the more I think, it's actually better to make your server resilient to restarts anyway. And so I think I may get rid of the purge require cache approach in favor of just restarting the server on
Okay.
file changes.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it for me is like you do you. It's like completely under your
Yeah,
control. So if the perf isn't as good as you wanted and you want to go back to purge require cache, that's fine. Right.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I may do it differently in different apps too. Again,
Mhm.
it just depends. Like my personal website, I do a lot of stuff. Like there's tons of in-memory caches and stuff that make tons of sense as an in-memory cache. Like I've got in-memory caches of some SQL queries that get updated every minute and stuff. I don't want to persist that. So yeah, there's just tons and tons of stuff. That site is like crazy. So yeah, I may do that differently. But yeah, lots to experiment with, and I love the options, and I'm super looking forward to the improvements. Now that you've solidified the approach, and now you can start optimizing, it's only
Yep.
better from here.
And I will say, if you wanted to rely on our restarting of the server for you, just remember that right now there still is a bug where we're not waiting for the previous one to be killed properly. So
Oh,
there's a
right.
race condition there, and sometimes the port will already be taken. And yeah, that'll be fixed for
Yeah.
16.1, but just for right now, you might want to hold off on that if you end up running into those port issues.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's a good point. Okay, awesome. Hey, thanks so much, Pedro. I appreciate you giving your time. Let's actually, I said that I would check for questions. It looks like there aren't any. So if you
Cool.
have any questions, where's a good place to ping you? What's the best way to provide feedback?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the Remix Discord, so you can go there and do discussions. There are some GitHub issues already for some of these bugs if you wanted to like help with reproducing them or anything like that. So I think those are probably the two best places. If you're not looking to like file a bug, but you just want to like ask random little questions or whatever, then Twitter's fine with me as well. So people can reach me on Twitter. And it's just P Cattori, just like the repo that was posted earlier.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. And I look forward to giving you a big hug next week.
Awesome. See you then, Ken.